Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on our mutual voyage together to truth and freedom, which will involve new alliances, individual and collective awakening, because there are now global bodies that are unelected, which are preparing to be able to impose laws that bypass democracy. I know that sounds like the sort of thing that I would make up, but it isn't. You guys are going to have a lockdown now because of this pandemic. Now, this is happening simultaneously to a bunch of censorship laws being passed across the world that will prevent freedom of speech and free conversation, where you might say stuff like, hey, is this lockdown necessary? I don't remember voting for it. That conversation, that's not happening anymore. A British politician who, during the pandemic, was important, but since then has been on reality TV and stuff. It's kind of crazy, really. He's saying there are definitely going to be more lockdowns, and your man, Klaus Schwab, remember when you voted for Klaus Schwab to be in charge of your life? No. Yeah, that's because you didn't. Anyway, he likes China and the way that they do lockdowns. So, all in all, what we're potentially moving towards, and let me know in the comments if you saw this coming, is a kind of globalist decree that will enable people without your consent or vote to lock you in your home if they deem it necessary. Of course, this is for your safety. Your safety. You can see from the way they carry on. Like, you know, what are they doing now? Oh, they're trading stocks in Congress. For your safety. Nothing but your safety in mind. Hit the notification bell and subscribe. We make this content every day. We want you to see all of it. Let's look at the first part of this rapidly evolving and exciting story.
We've got to be ready to hit a pandemic hard.
This guy was the health minister in our country during the pandemic. During the pandemic, he was having an extramarital affair, and this piece of footage emerged of him.
Lockdown action, if necessary, that is wider, earlier, more stringent than feels comfortable at the time.
That's so weird, isn't it? Because many scientists are saying that the impact of lockdown was negligible. Some people are saying that lockdown wasn't necessary, that it always have been focusing on sheltering the vulnerable rather than a ubiquitous lockdown. And yet he's saying it should be harder, stronger, longer. Are you still talking about lockdown, Matt?
And the failure to plan for that was a much bigger flaw in the strategy than the fact that it was targeted at the wrong disease.
This does not make sense, does it? Oh, the problem was we didn't start early enough. Don't worry about the fact that we was preparing for a completely different disease with different characteristics. The fact is we should have done that wrong preparation and wrong plan more and earlier. But it was the wrong plan. It's almost as if what they're favouring is the ability to regulate and control and impose authoritative measures over a correct response. They're trying to tell you that the problem was they didn't govern you hard enough, not they governed you badly. And one of the gatekeepers to prevent that kind of thing happening again is democracy, consensus, the ballot box, conversation, all things that are either being ignored or deliberately shut down. Britain must prepare for wider, earlier and more stringent lockdowns in the face of future pandemics, Matt Hancock has claimed. Well, he ignored the one we did do. If we'd have done it harder, I might have ignored it less. But you were out actually having an extramarital affair because it weren't hard enough. Should have been more stringent. If it had been more stringent, you wouldn't have that CCTV footage of me adjusting my winky woo, having an affair with someone I work with. I'd have stayed at home and honoured my marriage vows. In a way, it's your fault that I've been unfaithful. I'm gonna ring my ex-wife. Excuse me, yeah, we should have been more like China. Hello? Oh, TV remote. He made the claim despite mounting evidence that lockdown has caused more harm than the pandemic, from soaring child mental health referrals to a cancer bomb of patients whose treatment was delayed alongside a struggling economy. Now let me see those soaring mental health referrals for children. Ooh, and the cancer bomb again? More lockdowns, I think. David Davis criticised his former cabinet colleague, saying that lockdowns were ill-conceived and based on scientific guesswork, not science. He added, Mr. Hancock has not shown a smidgen of evidence to support his proposal that we should have locked down earlier, just as there was very little evidence when they chose to lock down in the first place. Now look, have you got any evidence? No. What about a smidgen? No. Mr. Hancock advocated for lockdown, saying that the UK was completely wrong by assuming a pandemic could not be stopped. It is central to what we must learn as a country that we've got to be ready to hit a pandemic hard, he said. We've got to be able to take action, lockdown action if necessary, that is wider, earlier, more stringent than feels comfortable at the time. I hope that's not what you were saying in that corridor. Now these could just be the wacky wild words of a long discredited nutjob who's since appeared on reality TV after being disgraced after being caught on camera having an affair. But the fact is that the WHO, who you didn't vote for but fund to a degree, also believe there should be more lockdowns. And wait for it, they don't want you voting for them. They want to impose them from a top-down perspective. And wait, I'm not finished. They want 5% of your country's health budget to fund it. We're locking you in your house. Oh, well, at least I don't have to pay for it. You do have to pay for it. Mr. Hancock said, I understand deeply the consequences of lockdown and the negative consequences for many, many people, many of which persist to this day. I don't think you do, because I think if you did, you wouldn't be saying that. You'd be saying lockdown was a mistake. The whole plan was for a different form of disease. There is now mounting evidence that when you weigh the negative consequences and side effects of lockdown up against its negligible benefits, the whole thing was an error. We were mimicking a nation that has an entirely different political structure and culture. And also, I apologise for ignoring those lockdown rules while the lockdown was happening. That's what someone who understands would say. Despite acknowledging their damage, Mr. Hancock later said he would still back restrictions unless the costs of lockdown are greater than the cost that the pandemic would bring. Well, I think that's where we are, darling. He admitted that the country prepared for the wrong pandemic by focusing on flu. They prepared for the wrong pandemic. I mean, isn't that government all over? I mean, isn't that an argument to radically alter the model itself? You don't want a model where you fund a centralised authoritative structure that prepares for the wrong pandemic and then says it should have prepared for it better and stronger and done more of it. But you've just said it was wrong. I know. But maybe if we'd done it so wrong, it might have gone all the way round and been right again. Don't think that's science. But insisted that even in those circumstances, restriction on civil liberties would also have been needed. Earlier this year, the Telegraph's lockdown files revealed that those running the country during COVID privately acknowledged that the lockdown was terrible for other outcomes. This is the problem with censorship and the assumption that centralised authority is better than you, cleverer than you, wiser than you. They make decisions like not telling us, because people all the time go, what about the impact on people that need regular cancer treatment or heart or diabetes medicine? And also, what about the impact on children? We were all saying that stuff anyway. No, la 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 la. It's all going to be fine. And then later they go, yeah, no, that was right. So how are you supposed to trust them for this next pandemic that they're already apparently planning or preparing for? Look at it however you want to. You need an open discourse so that we can consensually and democratically make decisions together. That's not a model they're interested in. Why? Because without the ability to stringently regulate, you cannot accommodate a model that requires corporate, global, non-domestic forces to act in the way that they would like to. And I include in that WEF, WHO, and global corporations. I'm not suggesting it's a conspiracy. I'm suggesting it's a convergence